We need to be able to play up and down the fretboard with ease, and one step towards that is to memorize your 5 pentatonic shapes. But that's not enough. We want to sound good in each of those shapes. So in this video, we're going to do 1 lick for each of the 5 shapes. That's 5 licks and 5 shapes. And on our Patreon group this week, we're going to do 3 licks for each shape. That's 15 licks. So let's start with easy shape, right? That's always a good place to start. Now, one of the things that's important about easy shape is changing up the order of the notes that we play, because it's far too easy to play scale-wise here, right? It's the most comfortable shape to play, and the downside of that is that we tend to just play the next note in the scale, the next note in the scale. So here's one that I got from, I think this is from Jimmy Page. I can't really remember, but whatever, it's a cool lick. So we're gonna mix up these top 2 strings. Normally, we would play them in a certain order, but this time we're gonna go from the B string to the high E string, back to the B string again. I didn't even move my finger yet, right? I'm just gonna bar those 2 strings. That's pretty cool little trick, because it's easy too. And then we're gonna bounce up to our pinky there at the 8th fret. That's a minor 7. Now it's sounding bluesy, right? There we go. I'm gonna go back to that 5th fret of the B string there. We're still just on 2 strings, but just the jumbling up of those notes makes it sound really cool. So far we have. Now we're gonna pass through the blue note, but we're gonna do it in a very common way that blues guitar players do, and that is we're gonna hit that blue note with our 3rd finger, and we're gonna slide off of it down 1 fret really quick, like that. So we hear the blue note just momentarily. Now we're gonna walk down 1 more step of the pentatonic to the 5th fret of the G string, and then we're gonna do my favorite bend. That's 3rd finger G string. And I can never resist. Whenever I do that bend, I'm always gonna do the bend, and then I'm gonna hit it again, not bent. Love that. Now we're gonna mix up the notes a little more and then find a target note. So the mixing up is gonna go like this. And to do that, we want to make sure that we use our 2nd finger. So we're gonna actually reach our 2nd finger around, because we don't want the 3rd finger playing the same fret of a different string, because it won't come out really smooth. It's just inefficient. So all we do is we reach our finger around for that note. Add 1 more note, and there's that little mix up. That sounds cool. Now the last note of a lick is often the most important, because we can use that to target a note in the chord underneath, or just a significant note of the key. In this case, we're going to target the 5th of the key. Why? Because the 5th has a really cool way of sounding like we're not done yet, like there's another cool thing coming. So if I do that little mix up and then end on the 5th of the key, you can see it has that sense of being unfinished. Let's put that whole thing together. What if I ended on the root instead? You'll see how different it's gonna sound. Whoa, it's very finished in that sense, right? It's very resolved. Now, we could even do the lick and end on the 5th, and then do the same lick but end on the root. That's a really nice way to do it. Now let's go to shape 2. This is what I call extension shape, because mostly in rock and the blues, we're playing just these top 3 strings, just these 5 notes. I mean, the 5 notes, that's all we need. That is the pentatonic, right? So what is that shape? There's the shape. That's sometimes people call it the box. Now, one of the things that I think a lot of my students forget is that there is a really sweet blue note right at the top of this. In this case, in A minor pentatonic, it's the 11th fret of the high E string. I really love how that's at the top, because we can go to it and back again, and it's a really nice move. Now that's cool enough, but let's mix up the notes a little more to make it interesting. So I'm gonna mix them up like this. You can see that we do that reach part there again, like we did in the last one, where we don't want to use the third finger twice on different strings. So we use the second finger to reach up and get that guy, right? Now, what note did I end on? Can you hear it? Can you hear what that tone is? That one is the root. We can hear the resolve. So let's choose a different note to end it on. Let's end on the fourth. That's a D note. That's going to have an open-ended feeling. Again, we can play one and then the other to get a really cool effect. Let's hear that with the jam track. Okay, that one's pretty easy because a lot of you probably know that extension shape, but let's do shape 3. Sometimes my students call this the triple stack. The triple stack here in A minor pentatonic would be 10, 12, 10, 12, 10, 12, but 9, 12, and then 10, 13, and then 10, 12. It's a little more difficult of a shape, but actually there's a lot of tasty things we can get out of that. And again, one of the things I think people often forget about this shape is where the blue note is. There's a perfect one right here on the high E string. If we just descend through it, that high E string would be 12, 11, 10. That's so easy, just 3 notes in a row. And don't forget, that's a root there, right? So that's just descending through the blue note to the root. But let's make it a more interesting lick. And maybe we don't land on the root yet. Let's try something like this. Again, it's just a way of mixing up the notes to turn the scale into a lick. Passing through a blue note if you want that kind of bluesy sound, and ending on a target note. In this case, what note did we hit? We hit the D note again, the fourth, just like we did in the last one. Again, that's going to make it sound unfinished. One of the things you can do to finesse this lick is I like to give this note, this C at the 13th fret of the B string, just a little bend. Now I already showed you where the root is, so let's do the lick but end on the root. And here they are with the jam track. And remember, you should always try playing some of these licks faster. Some licks work at slow tempos, some at medium, some at fast, some all, doesn't matter. Now we've got 2 more shapes to go, and let's use a different kind of technique. This technique I call the bend and touch, where we take our favorite bend, we play it up, and then we touch and play a different note with a different string, different finger. But first, what is shape 4? Shape 4 would start at the 12th fret here. Here's A, that's A string of the 12th fret, that's A, right? And this shape is what I call funny B string shape. So we're starting from A, we're gonna play 12, 15, 12, 14, 12, 14, 13, 15, 12, 15. Now, just like I have in my books, Guitar Soloing Like a Pro, we have to memorize where our favorite bends are for each shape. And here's our favorite bend. In this case, in the key of A minor pentatonic, it's their 15th fret of the B string. And that's where we're going to do the bend and touch. We're going to use our third finger and maybe some other fingers to support that bend. And then our pinky's going to come in and play the 15th fret of the high E string. And we're going to pluck that with our pick, usually going up on that note. The bend and touch is a great sound for blues, is a great sound for country, is a great sound for country rock and southern rock, just about anything really. You can even hear it in AC/DC. But let's turn it into a lick, right? We're imagining our shape 4 minor pentatonic. We're going to do the bend and touch, and I'm going to do the touch twice, just to make it more interesting. And I'm going to go down to the root, but that's just halfway through the lick, so wait for it. Now we got to mix up the notes a little, right? Yeah, let's end on the root this time. Why not? That sounds cool. Just a quick way of mixing up the notes. Instead of going scale-wise, I'm just jumping one step, right? You could give that C note on the B string, the 13th fret, a little bend. We actually did that in the other shape. That's the same note in shape 3, but now it's under our first finger, and that's just a really good one to bend. The minor third, you can bend it just a little bit. So, that whole lick now is... Now, just pick another note to target at the end. We could actually pick any note in the minor pentatonic, but in this case, we're going to target the D again because, well, it's just handy. It's right there, and it's still going to make it sound like we're unfinished. So I put that together, but I'm going to end there on D. Do the same lick and end on the root. The last shape is shape 5, and I find it kind of curious that a lot of students will shy away from shape 5, but actually it's a really useful one. It's very easy to memorize because it's symmetrical, and it's actually pretty easy to play. And like I always say, it's got a blue note in a very sweet place. They all seem to have that, don't they? Well, where is it? It's on the B string. But first, what is shape 5? Remember that the root of shape 5 is there on the E string. It would be third finger, or maybe pinky sometimes, but usually third finger. And it's right underneath easy shape. This is where it all restarts again. But where's that blue note again? That's on the B string, and it's right in the middle of these notes. So the B string in A minor pentatonic would go 15, 16, 17. That's the blue note. That would be walking up to the root. Or if we descended from the root down to the other root with that blue note, I mean, that's just the scale, but it already sounds good. But we're going to take it another level, right? What I love to do in this spot is I love to start on that blue note. When we start on the blue note, it's like we're pushing the dissonance of the blue note harder. We're making it really obvious. So we're going to take that blue note and we're going to hammer 1/2 step above. So from the blue note, we hammer, what is that, 16 to 17. And that does mean that the tension is released right away. But the fact that it's on a downbeat makes it pretty strong. Then we're just going to ascend the minor pentatonic and pull off. Now we could just back up a bit, right? So we descend, back up. That's another way of mixing up the notes. It's just like repeating a note, right? It's back one and then continue on. Now let's pass through the blue note again, down a 1/2 step, back into the pentatonic shape. And then how are we going to finish this one? We're going to go, let's end on this note this time. What is that note? That's an E. That's the 5th. So we're back hitting the 5th of the key, which is also open-ended, right? It's in the 1 chord, like we said. It's the root of the 5 chord, so it works on basically any of the keys in your 12-bar blues. But it's a very good way of saying we're not done yet. You can see I'm using that reach around again with my second finger. Now, we could actually do the roll here as well at the end. That would also work. Either way works, but now let's end on the root. Where's the root? Well, there's a root up there like we said, but there's a root down here, 14th fret of the G string, that's an A, right? So let's make our way down there. The lick is the same, but we're gonna end there on A. Now see that second to last note I played there again, had a little bend? That's a C note again. There's something about that C note that just sounds so good to bend just a little bit, right? In this case, that 17th fret of the G string before we go to the root. So let's hear these with the jam track. 5 licks in 5 pentatonic shapes turned out to have been 10 at least, right? We can just choose a different target note at the end, or make them your own. Just mix and match. Remember that on our Patreon group this week, we're going to have tons more licks for each of these shapes, so you can really get good moving up and down the fretboard. And a lot of these ideas also come from my books, Guitar Soloing Like a Pro, and now book 2 is out as well, available on Amazon. So I'm going to put a video on the screen here for you from our channel. My name is Blue Morris, and I teach guitar lessons right here in Vancouver, and I'll see you in the next one.